What if world peace isn't just a political idea, but a cosmic requirement? For over 70 years, contactee messages have warned humanity about nuclear weapons and global conflict. Now, with unprecedented government admission about UFO crash retrievals and non-human intelligence, disclosure appears closer than ever. But there's a catch. According to Dr. Michael Salla, extraterrestrial contact may depend on one thing: humanity proving it can live in peace. From the Ashtar Command to 3i Atlas, from the Pentagon to the United Nations, and even to President Trump's Board of Peace, the pieces may be aligning for something historic. Are we witnessing the final steps before open contact? Let's explore the evidence.
Welcome back, everyone. We are now ready for another presentation, and that's going to be by me. I'm going to introduce myself. So I just want to say a little bit about my background, because for me right now, we are entering into a very exciting period that kind of like brings together things that I was doing 30 years ago and things that I am doing now. We're going back like close to 30 years, and I was a scholar in, I was studying peace and conflict resolution. And I got a PhD looking at the nonviolent philosophies of Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and applying that to international relations, because they envisaged that international relations could be resolved using nonviolent action. So that was something that inspired me at the time, and later on I got jobs where I was specializing in international peace and conflict resolution. My last full-time job was as an assistant professor at American University from 1996 up until 2001, where I was working with graduate students in the International Peace and Conflict Resolution program at American University and teaching them all about the different tools available for promoting resolution of conflicts and promoting peace. Now, in 2001, everything changed for me. I watched the Disclosure Project press conference by Stephen Greer, and that just kind of like the light bulbs went on. You know, they just turned on. It was like all of a sudden I realized that while this whole extraterrestrial phenomenon was real, that it wasn't something that could be ignored. And very importantly for me, I realized that it was central or critical for understanding what it is that really drives international conflict. And if you want to bring about world peace, the extraterrestrial phenomenon was central to that. So my very first paper was focusing on the intersection between exopolitics, this new science, this new social science that I was helping pioneer, and its connection to world peace. Now, unfortunately, at the time in 2002 and 2003, when I wrote that paper and circulated it to my academic superiors, there was zero interest in the UFO extraterrestrial phenomenon. They thought it was conspiracy theory that had no place in the university. And so I was told very clearly not to associate the university with this exopolitics research, and if my academic career was to have any future, I had to really, put all that on the sidelines. Unfortunately, I didn't do that, and so I parted ways with the university in a very unpleasant way. But my interest in the extraterrestrial phenomenon and world peace has never gone away. I still see the two as very strongly connected. And so this is the kind of foundation for where I want to take my presentation. I will talk about what is, to my mind, a very clear connection between the extraterrestrial phenomenon and world peace. And so if you go back to the very early contactees and you look at, say, someone like George Van Tassel, and he wrote several books. I wrote The Flying Saucers and The Mystery of the Flying Saucer Phenomenon. So he came out in 1952 with a number of books, and he was in contact with different beings, in particular with an organization that he was told was the Ashtar Command. So this is really the first time anyone has ever mentioned the Ashtar Command, and that began with George Van Tassel in 1952. And so in March, he was given a message, greetings from the realms of Shah, miles above, which was a space base 72 miles above the Earth. Watch your skies in the months of May to August. And on April 6th, he got the message from this Ashtar Command saying, quote, your Pentagon will soon have much to muddle over. We are going to give this globe a buzz. So this was before the famous Washington flyover. And so then you have the Washington flyover happening 2 months later, after Van Tassel was told that this Ashtar Command was going to give the Pentagon, was going to buzz the Pentagon, because these flying saucers flew over not just the White House and the Congress, but also the Pentagon. They flew over the Washington, D.C. area on 3 successive weekends. So in one of my books, Antarctica's Hidden History, I talk about this and look at, well, to what extent was this a flyover involving the Ashtar Command or a flyover involving Germans from Antarctica? So I talk about it in there, and I don't see why you couldn't have had both things happening at the same time. It seems that there has been this kind of parallel process where you have both positive extraterrestrials and negative extraterrestrials doing things to persuade the US government, the Pentagon, to make decisions in alignment with where that group of extraterrestrials wanted people to go. So this is where we get one of the messages coming from the Ashtar Command through George Van Tassel. And what he said was, quote, the purpose of this organization is, in a sense, to save mankind from himself. Some years ago, your nuclear physicists penetrated the book of knowledge. They discovered how to explode the atom. We have not been concerned with their explosion of plutonium and uranium-235, the uranium mother element. This atom is an inert element. We are concerned, however, with their attempt to explode the hydrogen element. So the Ashtar Command was basically saying that if humans wanted to go to war against each other using fission nuclear weapons, as happened during the Second World War with the 2 bombs dropped on Japan, well, that's their business. But if they start developing thermonuclear weapons, that is hydrogen bombs, and start detonating those, then that becomes a problem for the entire solar system and beyond. And so this is, very clearly a reference to the need for humanity to stop the development of these destructive weapons and achieve some degree of world peace. And it's very interesting that soon after this message came out, President Eisenhower came up with his famous Atoms for Peace initiative, where the United States offered to place its entire nuclear weapons research program and arsenal under the control of the United Nations if the Soviet Union agreed to do the same. Unfortunately, the Soviets declined, and that was related to the fact that Joseph Stalin died in 1953, and the Soviets at that time were kind of leaderless, and no one wanted to take an initiative that might support the capitalist superpower, which was the United States. So nothing happened. But I think you can make a very strong case that Atoms for Peace initiative that Eisenhower launched in 1953, that was influenced to some degree by the kind of communications that George Van Tassel was relaying to the Pentagon. And there were other contactees like George Adamski also communicating with the Pentagon on behalf of extraterrestrials, emphasizing world peace. So there's a very clear connection here between these, say, positive extraterrestrial organizations, Ashtar Command, and the creation of world peace. And so it's, to my mind, no accident that in 1951, you had this movie come out, which is a classic, and to this day is still something that stands out, which is The Day the Earth Stood Still, where they made a case for the importance of world peace and how that relates to extraterrestrial contact and how important world peace is to becoming a part of the wider galactic community. So there you have what clearly is a reference to the development of thermonuclear weapons that many scientists, prominent scientists like Robert Oppenheimer, Albert Einstein, and others were opposed to. The scientific community were being secretly influenced by these positive extraterrestrials to oppose the development of thermonuclear weapons, and that it was very important to establish world peace and prevent such weapons being utilized. And I think this was really a very important factor behind the development of this movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. The director, Robert Wise, I think was really acting under the behest or even working directly with some positive extraterrestrial group, but certainly with the scientific community that were opposed to the development of these weapons systems. And in the movie itself, The Day the Earth Stood Still, you see that the Pentagon really wasn't very responsive to the exhortations of the extraterrestrial Klaatu here for establishing contact and world peace, but it was the scientific community that responded. So I want to now kind of move forward a little bit to another message, again emphasizing the need for world peace. And this was the Vrillon message from 1977, which is where the Ashtar Command hacked a major British television broadcast, ITN TV, to deliver a message. And this message really, I think, again, addresses the connection between world peace and extraterrestrial contact.
Settlement based on one man, one vote. But it doesn't fit.
This is the voice of Allah, representative of the Ashtar Galactic, speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as lights and experiments. We speak to you now to say the things we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race and your worlds, so that you may communicate to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disaster which threatens your world and the beings on other worlds around you. This is your as the planet passes into the new age of Aquarius. The new age will be a time of great peace and liberation for humans. Be still now, and whisper, for your chance may not come again. All your weapons of evil must be removed. The time for conflict is now past, and the race of which you are a part may proceed to the higher stages of its evolution if you show yourselves worthy to do this. You have but a short time to learn to live together in peace and goodwill. Small groups all over the planet are learning this, and exist to pass on the light of the dawning new age to you all.
Okay, I'm not quite sure what happened there. It looks like it was interrupted at some point. Let me read the last sentence. You have but a short time to learn to live together in peace and goodwill. Small groups all over the planet are learning this and exist to pass on the light of the dawning new age to you all. So the message here is, again, one that's emphasizing the need for peace and eschewing all kinds of war and the development of weapons that perpetuate war in any way. So what we have here, if we look at the history of extraterrestrial contact, especially from the positive side, those beings that are associated with organizations like the Ashtar Command or the Galactic Federation, there is an emphasis on abolishing weapons and really bringing about an age of peace on the planet where conflicts are resolved in non-violent ways, or at the very least, any violence is minimized or done in a way which is kind of more of a police action as opposed to kind of like organized warfare. So that's what the extraterrestrials have been telling us, going all the way back to George Van Tassel in the early 1950s. So this takes us now to what is unfolding with disclosure and with the governments that are really, or the authorities that are kind of like promoting a particular type of disclosure. So let's take a look at the disclosure movie that just came out, The Age of Disclosure. So here you have senior government, military, intelligence officials acknowledge UFO crash retrievals, non-human intelligence, and reverse engineering. So all of that is a step in the right direction. People are learning some of the truth of what's been happening since the 1940s, and even earlier, if you go into the 1930s, that there were crashes back then. So the public's being primed for official disclosure. So the public, through this movie and through the disclosures of many public officials associated with this disclosure movie, I mean, you had 34 witnesses, high-level government, military, intelligence officials being interviewed for this documentary. So the public's being primed for official disclosure, and they're being told that this is something that they need to pay attention to. However, unfortunately, you still have this kind of like negative light thrown on the phenomenon where UFOs are framed as a national security threat. That it's like, well, the UFOs, they're buzzing our military facilities, they're flying over our airspace, we don't know what they are, we don't know what their agenda is, they are a national security threat, we need to get ready to deal with this threat. So it's kind of like all primed towards getting the public to acknowledge UFOs are real, that they've been crashing, they've been retrieved, there's been some reverse engineering, but nevertheless they're a national security threat. Now, this movie, The Age of Disclosure, I think is really moving the needle forward in terms of official disclosure. There's been worldwide coverage. You have like papers like the New York Times, the kind of the legacy media organization in the United States that really kind of sets the agenda for the rest of the mass media. The Guardian newspaper in England, again, kind of like saying that this movie is very important. You need to pay attention to this. Then you have other newspapers like USA Today emphasizing the development of UFOs as a serious national security issue, as a public policy issue. And interestingly, we have a conference that was organized earlier this month from December 4 to 6, organized by the Society of UAP Studies. This was the international conference, and that made front page news on USA Today. And it's really saying that academia needs to get involved. So this is the reverse of what happened to me over 20 years ago. I was booted out of the university system because I was told point blank that my interest in UFOs, extraterrestrial life, had no place within a university. Now we're being told, more than 20 years later, that it is absolutely important that universities start studying this. And so these academics are making that case, and they get front page coverage on USA Today. So we really have come a long way now. And that is because you can call them white hats. You can say what you like about the agenda, that it's a limited hangout. But I think the decision has been made to kind of like prepare the public for some of the truth and those things that are acceptable, like UFO crashes, the retrievals, efforts by corporations to reverse engineer these, even though they're kind of framed as unsuccessful attempts to reverse engineer recovered extraterrestrial technologies, and the existence of non-human intelligence, that they are real. But nevertheless, it's all framed as this kind of national security problem, and that there's a threat associated with it. So what I want to talk about now is shift to the three-eye atlas phenomenon, because I don't think it's accidental that it's happening right now. I mean, just as you have the release of this movie or this documentary, The Age of Disclosure, kind of like an unprecedented attempt by public officials to reveal what they know about this phenomenon. And so the word is getting out, they're being encouraged to do it. Then we have Three-Eye Atlas popping into the picture. And it does seem to be serendipity here, because what Three-Eye Atlas is doing is it's sparking a global awakening. There's unprecedented public interest in Three-Eye Atlas. There's been this international asteroid warning network that was activated for Three-Eye Atlas. The first time that this network that involves like the effort by observatories and astronomers from all over the world through the United Nations to look at near-Earth objects, asteroids, comets, and so forth, and the likelihood that they would crash into the Earth, that this was like an early warning system. And they've been asked to track Three-Eye Atlas, this interstellar comet, which is the first time ever that has happened. And so for a 2-month period from November 27 to January 27, so we've just like 2 weeks into this period, most major observatories and amateur astronomers all over the world are looking at Three-Eye Atlas and trying to determine what it is and whether or not it poses any kind of threat, or just tracking it. I mean, the alert was put out as a kind of tracking exercise, but nevertheless, everyone in the astronomical world is paying attention to Three-Eye Atlas. Now, it makes its closest approach to Earth on December 19. So that's 6 days from now. So that's next Friday. So things might happen when it makes its closest approach. And Lily talked about that in her presentation, as did Stuart, what might happen. And I will kind of like look at that very briefly. Very interestingly, it makes its closest approach to Jupiter in March of 2026. Now that's interesting, because what I have learned from other sources is that there is a major diplomatic facility in the upper atmosphere of Jupiter, which is the supposed headquarters of the Ashtar Command. and that this has been a diplomatic outpost for meetings. And so if you have beings on 3i Atlas, and as Lily and Stuart both talked about some of those beings, it would make sense to me that those beings would want to get close to Jupiter at some point and actually travel there and appear before the councils and the diplomatic outposts there and make their case for why they think the Earth experiment should continue or not. So this is something that I think is very, very relevant, that 3i Atlas makes its closest approach to Jupiter in March. And Stuart did say that March would be a very, very important year. Oh, sorry, March would be a very, very important month in 2026 in terms of the events that would be happening then. And I suspect that it's going to have a lot to do with the way in which the extraterrestrials on board 3i Atlas relay the information that they've gathered about the Earth. And I think the kind of information that they've gathered on the Earth is essentially going to be along the lines that, well, Earth humanity is awakening. Most of humanity is ready or wants extraterrestrial disclosure. They want to learn the truth. There is a small group of psychopathic leaders that have been manipulating the rest of humanity. Those leaders deserve to be removed from power, and that the Earth experiment should continue with the people of goodwill taking control of the planet. So something along those lines, I think, is going to be relayed, that the Earth experiment deserves to continue. Right, so here is something that I thought was very, very fascinating, and that is the leak of some photos that appeared in September and may have actually been leaked even earlier. Now, what you have here on the right is a photo taken by an amateur astronomer in early December. And so you can clearly see 3i Atlas with this kind of long tail behind it facing away from the sun, and this kind of like kind of shorter anti-tail facing towards the sun, which isn't normal cometary behavior. That should not happen. So this was how 3i Atlas looked in December. But this leaked photo on the left, this photo supposedly came from something called the Cassandra Project, which is related to some highly classified telescopes that belong to the Pentagon, and apparently they were released by some sympathetic insiders or white hats. And what it shows is what is a kind of more high-resolution version of 3i Atlas, and it looks very much like a spacecraft that is being accompanied by other craft. And that's very interesting, because this is something that quite a few people had mentioned, and Lily talked about that, and actually how some of these craft may in fact make their way towards the Earth. I've been working with JP, a US Army insider, whistleblower if you like, active service. Well, now he's retired, but he was given information about 3i Atlas, saying that it also was being accompanied by a fleet of craft, and some of these craft would break away and some would head towards the Earth. But this photo that was leaked by 3i Atlas looks very much like a spacecraft of some kind. Now, of course, as soon as it was leaked, as soon as it came out, there were those that said, well, this is just an AI hoax. It's a forgery. It's not real at all. But what you can see here is that that there is a very clear similarity in terms of the morphology, like the structure of 3i Atlas, as you can see in this amateur photograph, and the leaked photo that came out much earlier, several months earlier. And that's quite separate to the kind of fuzzy white ball that you see in all the NASA images that have been released. So it's only amateur astronomers that show 3I Atlas having this formation. The James Webb Space Telescope, the Hubble telescope, other official telescopes show 3I Atlas as this kind of fuzzy, indistinct white ball. So here you have a close-up of how 3I Atlas looks. As I said, it was leaked by someone associated with something called the Cassandra Project. Well, when I did my due diligence and is there such a thing as the Cassandra Project? I found that there was an actual paper written in 2005 by a team of scientists that called themselves the Cassandra Team. That was created in 2005 and is a planetary defense system for near-Earth objects. So to me, this is pretty compelling evidence that this image allegedly leaked from the Cassandra Project from a classified Pentagon telescope is actually genuine, and it's showing some kind of spacecraft and it being accompanied. And so you can understand why now NASA has been covering this up. Now, Lily, in her presentation, talked about smaller ships traveling alongside the 3I Atlas craft, and that it's a very large craft, and some of these craft may actually be landing on Earth at hidden star points, and that they'll be uploading or unloading gifts for humanity, plants, medicines, and advanced technologies. Now, I mentioned earlier JP, who I've been working with since 2008, and he's traveled, or he's been taken on some biodomes. To date, I think we've talked about 3 or 4 missions he's done, both before he joined the military and after he joined the military, where he goes into these biodomes and he says he's shown these plants. He's shown extinct plants, insects, and even animals, and that these were being kept in reserve as a kind of something that could be used by humanity at some point. He's also traveled to the inner Earth, where he's met the ant people, and he was given some plants that would really be helpful for humanity, but those plants were confiscated by the deep state and used for their own purposes. But I think that the important point here is that there's corroboration for the information from Lily that 3I Atlas is associated with extraterrestrials who are prepared to hand over to humanity certain gifts such as plants, medicines, and advanced technologies which will improve the human condition, and by no means intended to help the military develop better weapons, that this is part of the overall agenda of the extraterrestrials to improve the quality of human life and promote peace on the planet. All right, so this is something Stuart mentioned in his presentation, and I thought it was very, very important that there's a cover-up of 3I Atlas radio signals, that 3I Atlas is a spacecraft, that it is transmitting radio signals for people to hear what it is that 3I Atlas is wanting to communicate. And I shared earlier the Rilon message, that the extraterrestrials will do that they will transmit radio signals, television signals for reception by humanity. And of course, what happened with the Rilon message is that after that, the deep state ensured that no further television or radio networks would be hijacked by the Ashtar Command or positive extraterrestrial organizations. So what we have now with 3I Atlas is that there are, well, first of all, 3i Atlas itself, this was something that Dr. Avi Loeb showed, was that the 1977 WOW signal, which was when a group of astronomers detected radio signals coming from a area in the Sagittarius constellation that they thought was a communication from extraterrestrials. And that was very quickly discredited and debunked. But nevertheless, what Avi Loeb found was that the WOW signal originated from pretty much the same area as 3i Atlas was being tracked from. So 3i Atlas came from a particular area or in the direction of the Sagittarius constellation, the same area where the WOW signal emanated from, and Avi Loeb was suggesting here that 3i Atlas was responsible for the WOW signal. So in 1977, 3i Atlas announced that, hey guys, humans on Earth, we are coming your way, and we're going to do a big tour and say hello. And of course, the military covered all that up. Now, what's happening now, and this is something that Stuart mentioned in a earlier presentation, is that radio signals are being blocked by 200 Starlink satellites assigned to the Pentagon. So Stuart has identified 200 Starlink satellites that are being used exclusively by the Pentagon to block these radio signals. Now, this is actually, again, doing due diligence. There is something called Starshield, which is a SpaceX satellite service for the US military. And what is happening is that the US military, or the Pentagon, is using Starshield to block radio communications from 3i Atlas. And Elon Musk is on the, I mean, he knows about this. Musk is covering up the truth about 3i Atlas. So when Musk says, well, he doesn't know anything about whether there's an extraterrestrial cover-up, I mean, he's lying through his teeth. And it's interesting that Joe Rogan did an interview, I think with Dan Farrow recently, where he pretty much said the same thing, that, yeah, you know, he's friends with Elon Musk, but he thinks Musk is lying through his teeth when it comes to the existence of extraterrestrial life. And, you know, based on this information relayed from Stuart, I have to agree with him. Okay, so this takes me to President Trump and the Galactic Federation. Here's something that's very important. I think that needs to be mentioned, because people really jump on Trump and say, well, he's a megalomaniac, egotist, he just wants his name plastered anywhere. I mean, the guy has a family connection to this information. His uncle, John Trump, worked at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology as a full professor at the time where you had Nikola Tesla's papers being evaluated. And Tesla was very much into the ET phenomenon, building anti-gravity, new energy-propelled spacecraft. And so John Trump was the man hired by the FBI to review those papers and see whether there was any national security influence in them. In my own due diligence on John Trump, what I found was that his work on Van de Graaff generators made him an expert on high voltage electrostatics, which is precisely behind the electrogravitics that are used by these spacecraft. And the Massachusetts Institute of Technology was involved in the study of recovered spacecraft from the Roswell crash. So all of this is part of President Trump's family history. And Trump is on the record. He did interviews in the 1980s saying that his uncle, John Trump, told him a lot of advanced stuff about technology. So he was hinting at the fact that he was being told about these kinds of flying saucer technologies. So now we fast forward and we have this professor from Israel, Haim Eshed, a full professor, the father of Israel's spy satellite program. He was a brigadier general in Israel's defense force, and he shared in an interview quote, "The UFOs have asked not to publish that they are here. Humanity is not ready yet. Trump was on the verge of revealing, but the aliens in the Galactic Federation are saying, wait, let people calm down first. They don't want to start mass hysteria. They want to first make us sane and understanding. They've been waiting for humanity to evolve and reach a stage where we will generally understand what space and spaceships are." So this was from an interview Haim Eshed did in January 5, 2021, and that was essentially 15 days before the end of the first Trump administration. And here he's saying that Trump was working with the Galactic Federation, wanted to disclose the truth, but the Galactic Federation said, no, humanity isn't ready yet. And we can talk about that in the Q&A as to why they would have said that, but it's important to acknowledge that that Trump wanted to disclose, but not only did he have opposition by the predictable kind of deep state actors that wanted to keep people in the dark, but also the Galactic Federation said, we aren't ready yet. Very interesting. All right, so this takes us now to multiple sources that say President Trump has been briefed on UFOs and that his personality is such that he is going to become the disclosure president. So I have a video clip here from Walter Kern, who is a novelist, and he talks about what he was told about Trump being briefed about extraterrestrials, about these human-looking extraterrestrials, and how and why he believes Trump is going to become the disclosure president. So let's play that clip, please, Angelica.
Just listen to this soundbite. Watch.
I don't like to characterize necessarily where they came from. They're definitely some kind of non-human sentience, but it is true, believe it or not, we've recovered the vehicles. And we actually have physical proof, and I was actually partially cleared into some of those activities. It was beyond oral testimony provided to me. I actually had partial access to the data and actually read the intelligence reports resulting from those programs.
With your own eyes,
Correct.
You saw it.
Yes.
Dave Grush is a friend of mine, and he's a source, and I've known him for 3 years. I was texting him in the green room. I said, what can I tell Megan's audience? He said, the problem with the aliens is that we care a lot about them, but they don't care a lot about us. In other words, we're still exploring this universe. The gorilla was only discovered in the middle of the 19th century. It was a mythical being that they finally discovered in the jungle. They found bodies and so on. I'm convinced, and I hate to tell you this, that Dave is telling the truth. And that against great pressure and great mockery, he's trying to describe our actual world to us. It's a world in which we have not made all the discoveries yet. I can promise you this, we're going to learn more about this. And in the same interview, he tells you that Donald Trump knows a lot about it. That's my information too. If you know anything about Donald Trump, he will not avoid bragging about what he knows before he... So I expect him to be the president who tells us what we haven't heard.
So I think that is a very important point, that psychologically Trump is predisposed to brag about what he knows about the UFOs. But I think also it's important to keep in mind what Haim Eshed said, that Trump tried in his first term of office to reveal the truth about extraterrestrials, but was blocked not just by the deep state, but also by the Galactic Federation. So now he is in his second administration, or third, depending on where you stand on the whole kind of stolen election issue. Trump is poised, I think, to really come out early, probably before before the midterm elections in 2026. So November 2026, I think Trump will probably disclose some of the truth, that UFOs are real, that some of them have been recovered, they involve non-human intelligence, and and that'll just kind of like open things up in a way that is unprecedented. Now, what I found in my kind of due diligence of this phenomenon is that presidential administrations often work as a kind of tag team. I mean, the president is pretty busy with a lot of world issues, and so he leaves it often to his vice president to kind of like get into the nitty-gritty of certain important programs such as the UFO issue. So we had this during the Eisenhower-Nixon administration, where even though President Eisenhower was in charge, it was Nixon that was kind of in the know in terms of many ET-related issues. Similarly, when it came to Ronald Reagan and George Bush, Reagan had a little bit of information of what was going on, but it was George Bush that had the most. And so now with Trump, I think what you're having is that his vice president, J.D. Vance, is also being briefed on this. And whatever briefings he's received has kind of like really driven what he describes as an obsession with the UFO phenomenon. So let's listen to what J.D. Vance has to say about his newfound
There are
obsession.
stories that I am particularly focused on, in part just because you talk with your buddies about it. Like, I'm obsessed with the whole UFO thing. What's actually going on? What were those videos all about? What's actually happening? I haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet, but we're only 6 months in. We've been very busy. That's actually the August recess is in part me going to try to dive to the bottom of the whole UFO thing.
Oh, yeah.
So what J.D. Vance is really saying here is that he's been given the nod by Donald Trump to be the one to be informed about the UFO phenomenon, that Trump is too busy with all of the responsibilities of being the president and dealing with all these conflicts and dealing with the pressures of domestic politics and so forth. And J.D. Vance, as vice president, has much more freedom to focus on just the important issues that the administration wants addressed. And one of these issues is the UFO issue. So I think J.D. Vance is kind of like learning as much as he can. He's doing a deep dive into the UFO phenomenon. He's getting a lot of briefings, and I think he's going to play a big role in what's coming in terms of UFO extraterrestrial disclosure. Now, this is where we get the emphasis or the kind of development of world peace. And what you have is Donald Trump being involved in a number of peace initiatives, and I'm sure you're aware of how Trump has made claims that he's solved, I think, 8 international conflicts, and he's now trying to resolve conflicts such as Ukraine and Russia. And when it comes to the Israel-Palestine or the Israel-Hamas conflict, what Trump did was something that was very unusual. He enlisted the support of the United Nations Security Council to pass a resolution on the establishment of a ceasefire and a comprehensive peace plan for the Gaza Strip. So, and he said something about this board of peace that was part of the plan that was approved by the United Nations, and that it was based on his initiative, that he made a proposal to the United Nations, and it was passed by a vote of 13 votes in approval in the Security Council, and 2 votes that abstained, that is China and Russia abstained. So let's listen to what Donald Trump has to say about his Board of Peace proposal.
Just yesterday, the United Nations Security Council formally adopted my peace plan and officially endorsed the Board of Peace. This is a board like no other. It will have the heads of major countries, I think all of the major countries I hope Your Highness will be on the board. You'll accept, I hope. But the Board of Peace will be something that's never even been thought of before. And it's covering Gaza, but it'll end up covering large portions of the world. And I was honored to be chosen the chair of that Board of Peace. And I think you'll see something that nobody's ever seen before in terms of the status of the board. There will never be a board like the board that we're going to be announcing. Everybody wants to be on the board, and it'll end up being quite a large board because it'll be the heads of every major country, and the United Nations passed it.
Now, you need to really appreciate the significance of what Donald Trump is saying here. He's saying that this Board of Peace is going to be much more than just ensuring that there is peace in the Gaza Strip. He's saying that this board will end up, quote, covering large portions of the planet. Sorry, that should read planet, not board. So this is a board that's been created with up to 10 world leaders and possibly more who are going to be in charge, not just of establishing peace in the Gaza Strip, but large portions of the planet. So this is a Board of Peace established under the framework of the United Nations Security Council, which is going to morph into a kind of supranational body promoting world peace. Now, why in the world would they be doing that? And why was Trump accepted as the chairman of the Board of Peace? Now, if you go back to what I said earlier about the Ashtar Command, the need for humanity to establish peace in order for extraterrestrials to fully collaborate with us, I think the answer you come up with is that Trump has been briefed by the Galactic Federation, by the Ashtar Command, and he was told that, look, for us to come out and to reveal ourselves, and you need to establish certain parameters of world peace before that happens. And I think this is what is behind, and I totally agree with Stuart here when he said that Trump is eagerly trying to establish world peace, because this is something very important for what's coming. That is the disclosures of extraterrestrial life, that you cannot have disclosure without making significant progress towards world peace. Doesn't mean you're going to solve all international conflicts all at once, but you make significant progress towards all of that. And I think that's what is happening. And the fact that Trump has been made chairman of the Board of Peace, and that it's going to comprise prominent world leaders such as the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and other world leaders such as President Xi, President Putin, and so forth. To me, this is kind of like pretty compelling that this is going to be a supranational organization that establishes the peaceful parameters for our planet transitioning into a galactic society. Very important right there. So, this is where a lot of people cringe. They cringe. They say, well, no way will Donald Trump become world president. But as I've just shown you, the evidence is already there. The Board of Peace has been established, approved by the United Nations by a vote of 13-0, with Donald Trump being the chairman of the board, which is going to have authority over large portions of the planet. He is going to be the leader of the planet in terms of establishing peace. That makes him a world leader. Now, does that make him a world president? Some people say it does. I mean, Gene Decode is one of those. George Cavassalis, who I've interviewed several times, they have both gotten from their sources that Donald Trump is destined to become the world leader or president, and that at some point he will resign as president and be replaced by J.D. Vance. And I was very interested to hear in a interview that was done with Nino Rodriguez that what Stewart said was that Donald Trump at some point will resign as president, and that he will be replaced by J.D. Vance. And I think that resignation will happen, not because they want to ensure that J.D. Vance has an easier time being elected president in 2028. I think they're doing it because Trump is going to take over this new role of being a kind of leader of this global board of peace that establishes the parameters not just of world peace but also of extraterrestrial contact. What we have here is another psychic source, Michelle Fielding. She says that the Ashtar command is overriding Trump in a military peace plan for 3 to 5 years. And so this kind of like fits in with what I've been saying with the establishment of this board of peace, and Trump becoming the inaugural chairman of that board, that this is going to really morph into a supranational entity. Now, some people might be upset about that, but I think for those of us that want extraterrestrial contact to happen, I think we can appreciate that this is something that extraterrestrials believe is very important, that there is the creation of world peace, and then they're not shy in saying that you need to have some kind of centralized global governing authority to establish that. And I think this is what this board of peace is all about. Now, Stewart has already talked about the 3 super states, and I think that the evidence, when we look at international events, that this explains what is happening. The US is suddenly enforcing the Monroe Doctrine. So again, that suggests, as Stewart suggested, that the United States is going to have responsibility over the Americas, the entire Americas. And so this is why all of a sudden the Monroe Doctrine it has become an important issue in the Trump administration, and he has kind of distanced himself from Europe and wants the Europeans to kind of like deal with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And what we're seeing now in terms of Russian military success in Ukraine and the incredible policies that, when you look at geopolitical analysts from Europe, they're just truly confused by the policies of the Europeans, by the Germans and the French and the English in trying to galvanize the European population to go to war against Russia. The European population want nothing to do with that, but yet their leaders are pushing and to do that, and they're trying to confiscate Russia's central bank holdings in Europe to use to kind of promote this war effort. And I think what's going to happen is that that's all going to collapse, and in reaction to that collapse, you're going to have something like what Stewart described. That is, that Russia is going to become the dominant power in Europe. NATO will collapse, the European Union will collapse, and what will be left will be a resurgent Russia that will kind of like bring sanity to what the European Union is doing, and lead and help the Europeans to restore their economy. I just want to emphasize some of the things that Brad mentioned in his presentation, Global Revolutions in 2026. He has described in this interview we did, deep state factions fighting over limited resources, that the deep state is just losing power by the day, and they're fighting amongst themselves over limited resources, which is just accelerating their decline. Truths about the inner earth, giants, suppressed technologies, Tartaria to be revealed. And he also talked about the formation of the North American Union.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.